Welcome to Tradier's The Trader's Edge. I'm Jim Iuorio. That's Bobby Iaccino. Join us and Mike Arnold at unfilteredinvestor.com, where we take some of the topics we talk about here and break them down a little bit more granularly. That's a hard word to say. This episode is going to be completely about the Chicago Bears and their dramatic comeback. No, it's not. It's not.
No.
If I had my way,
it's going to be.
If I had my way, it would be about the Bears' dramatic comeback against those awful Packers. They're just, I'm so glad. Like, did you see all the videos of like the Packers radio stations and stuff going, oh no. It was awesome. Yes.
Yeah, those are great. I actually, this year, I've watched a lot of like the opposing team compilations of social media people who just watch the game and talk about the game. Who would watch these guys instead of watching the game itself?
Exactly. It's crazy. And, you know, in the NFL this year, the Bears are 3-10 in games they've been down by more than 10 points in the fourth quarter. The rest of the league is 3-160. So, yeah, the Bears really are the cardiac kids. Anyway, there is a lot of market crap to talk about, too, by the way, too. And we have one of my favorite guests, but we're going to get to her in 1 second. But so everything seems to have shifted from domestic stories to geopolitical stories. You saw the latest in Iran, and you saw first crude shoot up and then shoot down. And I don't know why it shot down about an hour ago. I do know that I had some longs on that I got stopped out of that kind of were painful to me. But what was the story on why the down move in crude? Do you know?
Today's down move after the
just
rally?
like last hour. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know.
I don't know either.
And I don't know that our guest knows either. What I'm actually really interested in talking about today with our guest is Jerome Powell possibly going to prison for 10 years. I want to
talk about that too, because that
what she feels about that. But I don't know in terms of stories on the crude oil front. There's nothing that I found that I immediately say this is why. The only thing I could possibly think of is maybe Iran has accelerated to a point where I haven't read about it yet. Mm-hmm. And those 3.3 million barrels a day, which we're supposed to be blockading, we're not. We're supposed to be using sanctions. It's not working. That oil is getting to market. Yeah. And maybe it's going to be taken off markets for reasons that nobody can really control if there's that much unrest.
And maybe crude shot down just because it shot up a couple bars in a row and then it went down. Yeah. Anyway, we are bringing on one of my favorite people. She doesn't just have fabulous hair; she's a fabulous person. Her books. By the way, what's the one book is You Will Own Nothing, which I loved and read. What's the other book of hers that I love too? Do you remember?
I'm looking to see if I have that. No, I have You Will Own Nothing on the shelf.
Because I've read them both and I love them both, and I can't remember the name of the second. Let's bring on our good friend, Carol Roth. Okay, let's say the Kansas City Chiefs come and say, we'd like to trade a 30-year-old Patrick Mahomes who's nursing an ACL injury for your Caleb Williams. Do you take the trade?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Is there any quarterback you'd take the trade for?
Not today. Caleb Williams is showing that he is serious. He is competitive. He is a leader. He is firing up the offense, the entire team. And, you know, he's got like this essence of Michael Jordan greatness where, you know, we saw some of these, you know, he's on his back foot. He's making the pass to Roma Dunze, like on 4th and 8. Like, he is our guy and we are behind him in Chicago. And no, we are not taking anyone else. But I will tell you, I do have a headline on why oil is falling.
Oh, good. Give me. Yeah.
All right. So the headline, breaking news, is that Trump signals he could hold off on attacking Iran. So that's your reason. 2% move there based on Trump, which I'm guessing is probably a head fake, right? All the news leaked out and he's probably trying to create a distraction. But for whatever reason, you know, the algorithms or whatever took that under advisement. So that's created the fall. But I still, even with Trump doing that, I'm still not trading Caleb.
Bobby,
you my man.
Josh Allen, Drake May, you take neither of those guys right now straight up for Caleb Williams?
No. Well, I take Josh Allen. I mean, I just do. Other than his age.
You hate Bobby for saying that right now? Do we need therapy?
No, I don't. I mean, he's going the safe route. He's going, let's try and get it done right now. He's not thinking about the build of this very young Chicago Bears team that has just incredible amount of talent on offense, which is crazy to say, right? Because the Bears' legacy has always been as a defensive team. And if you look at the amount of weapons that they have, and young weapons, Luther Burden, who is just so amazing and so clutch. DeAndre Swift has come on hot here. We've got Adunze, we've got Colston Loveland, who, as this like catching tight end, looks a little bit more like a wide receiver than a tight end, has been blowing it out of the water. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, Loveland, Burden, and Monungai, and some offensive linemen I can't remember. All
and also Jade Walker. I mean, think about just like these like ancillary players. It's incredible.
Exactly. So I'm a massive Caleb Williams fan, and I'm a massive Chicago Bears fan. I mean, this is on my office wall. Can you see that?
Bear down.
I am a massive Bears fan. You take Josh Allen over Caleb Williams right now. You just, I mean, that guy's
You're thinking like a trader. I'm a long-term investor. I'm thinking for the future. You're thinking about the trade today.
You might be right about that. You might be right about. I'm just saying, Josh Allen's a first ballot Hall of Famer now. If he got injured to yesterday and never played a game again, he's still a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah, no, Josh Allen's great.
But I do want to show you this because I think he's vying for a shoe deal. Luis, can you put that up? And I think this will be the logo on his shoes. If you guys haven't seen this yet, that is the Caleb Williams jump, man.
That's amazing.
So I think that's
the real picture. Yeah.
That happened. We all watched that happen.
It happened twice. Yeah. It happened in the preseason against the Bengals last year. If you line them up, it's the exact same throw. It's crazy that he can do this like regularly.
I think he could be great. I think he could be Mahomes. We'll see. Again, I know you people are watching saying these Bears homers are absolutely crazy.
Yeah, we're not.
Yes, I'm enjoying it. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about markets. Let's talk about politics first and then how they get to market. Bobby, do you mind if I steal your question? No, you ask your question.
No, go ahead. Is the second book you're thinking of The War on Small Business? Is that what it was?
I'll go through the itinerary. So it's at first was the Entrepreneur Equation, then it was The War on Small Business, then it was You Will Own Nothing. So that's the trio.
Okay, so The War on Small Business and You Will Own Nothing are the two that I've read. I was not aware of the other, and I apologize. But to say I love those two books is an understatement. They were fabulous, fabulous books, and I appreciate that.
Okay, so here was my question. Jimmy, thanks. I really don't care who asks it as long as it gets asked to this particular person with this head of hair. Jerome Powell with the investigation by the Justice Department. Go. That's my question.
Okay. So I hate any questions about the Fed where I'm not just absolutely beating up on the Fed, because that's what my nature says to do. I hate the Fed. I want to
come to their defense.
I end the Fed. Like, I hate to say anything that is like maybe slightly ancillary to that, but I'm also an umpire. You guys know I'm not a cheerleader. I call balls and strikes, except for maybe for the Chicago Bears. So when it comes to Jerome Powell, the whole thing is super bizarre because the Justice Department's coming out and saying, oh, he's not under indictment. He's the one who came up with that. He's coming out in an unprecedented move with this weird gulpy video that just makes him look absolutely guilty of whatever, regardless of whatever it is you said he did, hand in the cookie jar, whatever. It was just a bad video that came out that the Fed doesn't do this. They don't make unscheduled announcements. They don't put out videos on social media. So the whole thing is just weird. That being said, there are a couple of things that I'm sure your audience understands, but I'm not sure everybody in sort of a broader standpoint understands, is that the Fed is technically a self-funding operation, right? So this idea, this renovation, which we all know is terrible optics, the cost is insane. It's going to cost more than the new Bears stadium. The whole thing is just, bad timing after the Fed has destroyed everybody's, livelihoods and the affordability and whatnot. But it's not coming technically from the taxpayers, right? It's a self-financing organization. They make money off the interest of the securities on their balance sheets. You can make the argument that, technically it does come from taxpayers because they're supposed to remit profits back to the Treasury. Higher operating expenses mean it's going to take longer for them to do that. But we also know since September 22, they haven't been running a profit and they haven't been getting any remittances, and nobody understands that. So nobody's actually making that argument. So if you're going to go after the Fed, go after the fact that they have absolutely obliterated our cost of living, that they're an entity that needs to be completely restructured. And maybe, guys, that's what this is all about. Maybe this is a way to open up having an audit and more scrutiny. And maybe there's some 4D chess being played. But my gut tells me that's not the case. And with all the other rampant fraud and waste that's going on at the government at all level and all the things that you could come down on the Fed for, this one just is reeking of politicization. And I think it's going to work in the opposite manner than the Trump administration would like for it to work.
Well, I guess that's your last point there is exactly the way that I feel about it. You worded it better than I could. It's this idea that this is the person you want to go after because of cost overruns for a building in Washington, D.C. I mean, obviously, he's somewhat of a real estate president, right? So he sees this and he's like, what are you doing? And it probably gets him, deep down in his soul, this kind of a cost overrun on just a simple building. But it saves us pennies relative. And this, again, is a president who, I'm not saying I'm against it, dramatically increased the defense budget, did not reduce spending like he promised, at least not so far, did attack regulations. I got corrected on that a couple of weeks ago, and I was happy I was corrected on that. Election word today. I still vote for him over Kamala Harris, that's for sure.
100%.
But there's things I'm really upset about on the economic side, and a lot of it has to do with the spending. And this just looks bad. I mean, Jimmy, am I wrong in any of this?
Let me just put it to the scale. Carol and Bobby, I want you to show fingers to show me what your rating is. 0 being this move to indict Powell is totally fine. 10, it's 100% Banana Republic bullshit. 3, 2, 1. What's your score?
Yeah. It's I'm going to do this in a 0.
Yeah. See, I gave it an 8.5 or 9 on the Banana Republic bullshit scale. It's again, and we both know that the last administration indicted 30 of Trump's cronies and tried to put them all in jail. We saw what happened to Michael Flynn, which was the most embarrassing thing for this country ever, to question the guy for 5 hours. And then when you have nothing on him, finally say, you know what, we're going to put your son in jail unless you cop to something. Yes, I'm being over dramatic about what it was. But Carol, to your knowledge, that was basically what it was for Michael Flynn, right?
This is definitely above my pay grade. I do not get into the inner workings of, the different indictments. I don't care so much about the inner workings. I care about them at a macro level. But I do want to pivot back, if you don't mind, Jim, to something that you and Bobby were talking about, which is this point of what's actually causing interest rates that are, the president is so desperate to get down the 10-year, the yield on the 10-year, and what's actually causing that. And it's not the Fed. We're in this period of fiscal dominance where monetary policy is having basically no impact on what's going on, particularly on long-term yields. And so what is causing that is, as Bobby pointed out, the deficit, this continued exploding, high deficit to GDP, where we stand across the board, debt to GDP, interest expense, as being higher than our defense spending and the like. And so where we could actually impact that yield is on the fiscal policy front, not on the monetary policy front. So if he wants to point the fingers at somebody for not getting rates down, it's Congress and himself. It's not the Fed anymore, because they're basically handicapped.
Okay, but you just hit on something that's interesting, because the 10-year yields have been basically trading straight sideways. I look at it and I say to myself, okay, one, bonds aren't going particularly higher because they know about the debt service and how much money we're going to spend like drunken sailors.
Well, and Jim, Treasury has been doing a crap ton of buybacks.
Oh yeah, right, exactly. But do you think that the market also feels that the Fed stands at the ready to buy 10-year if the yields went to 4.75? Yes. So do I.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, 100%. They've already started buying on the short end. Yeah.
Yeah, they will have no choice. And we've seen them. And I think the long-term trajectory of what is going to happen here is that there's going to be something that, whether it's yield curve control or de facto yield curve control, they're going to have to do this. Yeah. And so again, talking about the Fed and, an interest rate, 25 basis point, like, it just doesn't matter. It's like the little, pebble of sand on the beach versus the whole beach.
Well, it's funny because I was on a CME webinar today too, and they like to talk about their Fed funds contracts and what it projects. I said, doesn't matter anymore. Now it's what the Fed's going to do further out as far as bond buying. And I don't think they liked that message very much. But anyway, I want to ask one more question, then I want to throw it to Bobby. My question is this, is that we both believe that whatever Kevin is the new Fed chair, whatever is they're going to be dovish. Perhaps the economy is actually expanding. I think a lot of Trump's economic policies are good and working. I wanted him to have like 80% of his policies that I agreed with. It turned out to be about 60%. I'd still vote for him over the other one. I'm disappointed in some of the socialist bullshit stuff that's happening. But again, I would crawl over glass to vote for him again. The other situation was ridiculous. My question is does that, obviously it favors gold and silver. If they're going to be easy and the same time an economy is expanding, does it favor other risk assets like stocks too? Do you think stocks do very well in 2026?
So I think that they have to, and I go back to the underlying math of our fiscal foundation. And there's a reason that the president has been telegraphing that they're going to run things hot, because they are going to run things hot because they need for the market to stay at lofty levels. And the reason they do is because they need the revenue that comes directly and indirectly, both from capital gains, but also from the wealth effect. If you start getting a recession in the market, that is going to bleed into consumer confidence and consumer spending. And what happens, guys, if we take in less revenue because of a pullback of the stock market? Well, that means our deficit's going to explode even further. And to Jim's point, what does that mean in terms of yields? Those are going to go through the roof. We're going to end up in a debt spiral here. So they have no choice. They have to do the things. And this is why all of this discussion is happening. They have to do things in order to pump the stock market, because if we get a prolonged retraction in the market, it is going to be an absolute global financial disaster based on our fiscal foundation. So our portfolio is bookended like that. It's precious metals, it's cash, and it's equities, because we think that's what's going to happen going forward.
Love it. Bobby?
I got a comment from Widge I want to read real quick. He said, Trump said that Iran killings were over. We'll get you a link. Thanks for that.
He sent it on Twitter. He sent it. He copied both of us on Twitter. I just saw it.
Okay, no problem. I don't need to read it now.
Yeah.
And then he asked a question. Are we seeing the inverse of the Greenspan conundrum from 20 years ago, where the Fed couldn't get long end rates higher as they hiked? That was attributed to trade deficit and the global savings glut. That's going to be to you, Carol. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's
because I don't have an answer.
Yeah, it's a very interesting way to frame it, because yeah, I think that they're at the point where they have lost control, but for a different reason. There was always going to be, some major impact for having 15 years of ZIRP and near ZIRP policy. And we are now figuring that out. Everyone just sort of said, oh, well, things are going to go along just fine. And when you disrupt risk for that long, yeah, I think you you basically make the argument that it's an inverse type of situation. But, the reasoning that it's happening now is because of this fiscal dominance, at the tail end of ZIRP and everything that's happened. And the Fed has just completely lost control of the long end of the yield curve.
Carol, I don't know if this is something you look at all, but I was very interested to hear what Trump's affordability solution is. I really hate that word. That word just drives me crazy, because it means either prices continue up and your wealth goes up, or prices go down and your wealth stays. It could mean so many things.
Yeah.
It's just dumb. But anyway, it wasn't his word. I just hate that he adopted it. What do you think he could possibly do? What can you do from the executive branch to lower home prices? I'm convinced that's why he wants long end rates to fall, and he thinks cutting rates. I mean, it's obviously Besant is in his ear one way or the other. I think Besant knows these things. But where do you have to get the 10-year to get people who are in 3% 30-year loans to sell their house? And how far do house prices have to fall for those people still to get out of that house? What is the solution to what some people call the homeownership problem? Do you have one? Do you know of one?
I always have a solution, right? I'm not saying that it's the right solution, but I'll throw it out there and see what everybody thinks. And I think, by the way, and there's also a second thing we could talk about, because I think the lowest hanging fruit on what I call the affordability crisis, not the solution, is getting the government out of education. But we can circle back to that. But on the housing front, what I've basically said is I think that the government should work with the banks to make most, if not all, of mortgages assumable to qualified buyers. I think this gets it done. And what that does is, right now we have this housing supply that's locked up because not only have home prices appreciated, but also it's expensive to finance. And it's okay if one of those things are expensive, it's not okay if both. So, to attack the actual cost of financing, if you made the loans assumable, then what could happen is that the banks who are sitting around with nothing to do because nobody is really refinancing or anything, they could get a right of first refusal for the bridge amount, because we know the prices are higher and whoever's doing the financing, that mortgage is not going to cover the whole thing. So they can finance the bridge amount at current rates, but they can assume the lower rate. You get a blended average lower rates, and that would actually bring it down. It would still make the banks happy. And if it didn't make the banks fully happy, I kind of don't care. They've gotten so many bailouts and they're doing so well. They can finally take one for the team. But I think if you start getting rates, with a 5 handle, or, if you could even get it lower than that with these blended rates, that's going to open up the ability for people who maybe want to get out of their homes, but say, well, there's no way if I'm giving up this rate that I can get another rate like that, especially now that home prices are higher, whatnot. I think that would be the first step. Some people are talking about portability, but I actually think the assumability makes a little bit more sense for new home buyers and kind of gets all that going. And I also, by the way, I believe that this is a temporary problem. I think this is in 10 to 15 years with the, aging of the boomers. This is something that will, with demographics, rectify itself, but that still doesn't help us for the next 10 or 15 years. So assumability, I think, is the way to go. Now, that being said, we have all of these proposals about Fannie and Freddie buying more mortgage-backed securities and doing the things that we know that they like to do, to mess around and do this artificially. But I just feel like you could open up the markets via assumability. So I don't know if you guys like my solution, but that's
I'm fine with that. I have to think about it a lot too.
Never heard of it before, for sure.
Before Jim, before you go, I just want to say, so about 20% of loans are assumable. Most of those are ones that are done through the Veterans Administration and things like that. But it used to be that almost all loans were assumable. This is a more modern, recent thing that they're not.
And by assumable, for clarity, like if someone comes to buy my home, they can assume my mortgage.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me.
Then there's a loan for the difference too.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where that right of first refusal comes in, that opens up new business for the banks who are sitting on their hands anyway in creating the win-win situation.
We hadn't had a mortgage in like 20 years. And I remember telling my wife, because she's a lawyer and she's a good one, she doesn't understand anything about finances. And it's summer of 2020. And I'm like, oh no, we're refinancing, we're getting a loan. And she's like, what do you mean? We don't have a mortgage. I'm like, no, we're going to have a mortgage at 2.8%. If they're giving away money for free, we're taking money for free. And again, anyway, so my opinion on capital gains tax. I've had lengthy conversations with Larry Kudlow, with Stephen Moore.
Jimmy? Yeah. Jimmy, I'm sorry. Can I interrupt you? I want to put up Widge's comment real quick because it's pertinent based on the conversation we were just having. Yeah, sorry about that.
No, and Carol, the people who watch our show, like, we're fans of them, not us. It's some of the smartest people watch our show. Yeah. And so get the 10-year to. I can't
get the 10-year to 8%, and you'll get the landlords to sell their portfolio. The only problem I have with that is to who, if rates are at 8%.
Yeah, the bids are going to dry up. No, I don't have my hand up. I was scratching my nose.
Yeah, so that's all.
You got to give it up for the free marketeers and let the market set the price and let the chips fall where they may. But I think we're a little past that for at least a little while right now.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Jimmy. I'm sorry.
You mentioned capital gains tax in passing a couple sentences ago. I've talked to Larry. I've talked to Stephen Moore. They have the presidents here. I personally think it is like an economy that's banging its head against the wall to have punitive capital gains taxes that range from 15% to 23.8%. Economists on both sides of the aisle agree that if you lower that tax, you'll increase the revenues from it, which, by the way, is not really what I want. I don't want the government to have more money. I do want economic activity to be kicked up a little bit. What am I missing in this whole discussion about capital gains tax? Am I right? Am I really right?
So the problem is the economic illiteracy and this push from the woke side about what's fair and, why are you favoring the wealthy? And when you hear you're lowering capital gains, it's, it's the asset holders, it's the people who have benefited this entire time. And nobody wants those people to win again, even if it benefits everybody else. It just becomes a more difficult sell.
Yes.
So again, if everybody understood economics, we wouldn't be having like 90% of the conversations that we would be having. It's kind of like, you make intellectual discussions about, insider trading and how that actually would benefit, the retail investor and hurt institutions, but nobody wants to hear that.
Right.
Like you can't have these kind of like esoteric conversations because they're taken out of context and nobody understands the nuance and the foundation behind it. So it's not that you're wrong. It's just a very difficult political sell, and more so in this environment.
Exactly the same answer that both of them gave. It's a political loser. Quick
Yeah.
timeout. Luis, will you put up the banner? This is the time of the show where I ask a favor of our audience. Could you guys please, as a favor to us, scan that QR code and try Tradier's Tradier Pro options platform for free for 3 months. We talked to traders who've been trading options for decades, and some have been trading them for days, and they all say the same thing, that is an outstanding platform. Please give it a try for 3 months. Just scan that code. Do us a favor to us. I know we ask you guys a lot of favors, but we appreciate it very much. Thank you. And now back to the show. Bobby.
Carol, do you think we talked to Mike Green about this, and that was an interesting conversation.
I bet.
Yeah.
He's as opinionated as the three of us are.
Yeah. He's something. In terms of if there's any hope, and what I mean by that is, obviously we have about 2.5 years left of this particular president, and a lot of us feel he hasn't gotten started quick enough, for whatever reason. I don't care what the reason is. Is there hope, given that people have gotten, like, a lot of people have grown up now with this being the norm?
Yeah.
I know several active traders who've never seen a market where the Fed wasn't involved in rates at all. The three of us have seen it, but I wasn't that old when I saw it. It's just one of those things that's become the norm. And it's like the welfare state and everything else, where everybody, including now these corporations, turn to the government for help. Is there hope, or should we just figure out a way to make our own way, and to hell with all of it?
Oh boy. So I think, listen,
Mike Green had me thinking about this. That's
there
why.
is always a possibility and a path. The question is there the political will to get it done? And, my gut tells me, based on, what I have learned over the past, 15 to 20 years, be more focused on politics than any of us had to do when we started. Like you said, when I started in investment banking, nobody sat around waiting for a Fed press conference. Like, that was the most ridiculous thing ever. Nobody cared. This is a newer development. So, do we have that political will today? I don't think that we do, unless you get some of these billionaires that are able to free up capital and use the justice system to get rid and undo some of the huge influences, because there's no way the people in power are going to vote for less power for themselves. Like, we've seen this over and over. Even something as simple as Doge, right? Like, we all know about the waste, fraud, and abuse. That should be the most obvious thing. And the fact that there were these roadblocks and this hate, put towards Elon Musk and the people who were affecting this to try to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse that we know is rampant throughout the system and is part of what's causing this crazy deficit that we have. Like, if you can't do that basic level of like, hey, there shouldn't be fraud, I don't know how you fix the rest of the system. So, there's probably somebody who's very wealthy and very smart and can figure out a legal way, to get the unions out of controlling Chicago and, get term limits in place and, get the money out of politics and get rid of NGOs and all these things that are creating sort of this impossibility for us to move forward. But given the fragile fiscal foundation that we have, I think that it's just a really, really tough thing to be done. Now, that being said, we're all markets people. One of the things that we never know in markets is timing. So that doesn't mean that we can't go another 10 or 15 or 20 plus years without the whole thing breaking. But I do think part of what this administration is trying to do, which I really appreciate, is stop kicking the can down the road and actually come up with a solution. It's why we did what we did in Argentina. It's why they did what they did in Venezuela. It's why they're trying to affect, other kinds of changes to shore up some semblance of our national and economic security, certainly not from the inside, but from the outside. And so, to the extent that we're able to do that, maybe there is a Mar-a-Lago Accord, there's a reset in the global financial order. There are things that buy us more time. But all these tricks that we have to buy us time still requires, at the end of the day, Congress to then say, okay, we're going to be responsible. And now that you've helped us out of this jam, we're not going to run up, crazy deficits, and we're going to do the right thing. And I don't think that that's realistic at this point, unless we create real accountability for the people who represent us to be able to happen.
And there's only one way that accountability ever seems to come full circle, and that's when the bond market forces your accountability.
Yeah.
There's the Liz Truss moment in the UK. And by the way, for people who are watching who don't, guys like Widge and Remo, exactly what I'm talking about. But guys who don't know about it, when the bond market flexes its muscles and tells you you've been stupid and poor stewards of a currency in a bond market, that's an ugly sort of thing that happens. And to me, it seems like it's the only way that's going to happen. To load onto something you would say, and I want to get you a comment on too, is that you said smart guys will have an idea. Jim Bianco had a fabulous idea about the state of Illinois. And Jim Bianco, I think, and I did not know this provision was in our state constitution in Illinois. And by the way, Carol was an Illinois resident for people.
No, I still am.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought you meant
I'm broadcasting from Chicago. I had a little stint when I was partially out of town for a little bit, but I'm back full time in Chicago.
So you two stubborn people.
Yeah, no, Bobby, if not for the taxes in February, I love Chicago. I truly do. But anyway.
it's a great place and I don't know about you, Jim, but like my entire family's here, so there's like the family tax.
Yeah, I want to ask you both a question.
Sure.
How long have either one of you in your lives lived within the actual city limits?
5 years for me.
I mean, I'm still there. I've lived here since 2011 downtown.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were
north bank of the river.
I thought you were north suburbs. You're in the city now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been for since 2011, and then on the north bank of the river. Watching my backyard is the river. So,
by the way, you're going to be one of those city guys who makes a distinction, like, "Hey, you're not from the city." Are you kidding me? Is that really what you're going for?
Well, if you're going to say you love Chicago, you should live there. That's my only point.
No, I do.
My relatives, Jimmy, my relatives live around you.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, wow, there was a shooting 20 miles away.
Yeah, but I'm there every day. Well, not every day anymore, but I've spent a lot more money in Chicago than a lot of people who live in Chicago do. So my claim on it is valid, in my opinion, just to be clear. Don't roll your eyes.
Here's the thing. Nothing good happens after like 11 p.m. So don't be roaming the streets of Chicago after 11 p.m. And probably between 8 and 11, you want to be careful, but it's a great city.
I just can't have my wife return home from the park across the street from our house with a 9mm shell casing ever again.
No,
I'm just never going to let that happen again.
I get that. I was staying at the Hilton last summer, heard shots from Grant Park across the street because Hilton is still the windows open. It's such an old building. And I called Chicago police, and they're like, people, we don't even report that stuff anymore.
You know where I live? I live in MAGA country with Jussie Smollett. That incident happened outside of my window. And we watched, the whole thing, where this supposedly happened. And
that's
like
so
the whole,
funny.
we give tours on the way to the subway that's down the street and whatnot. So
the first I like the markets, but I also have a cousin who's a Chicago police officer. And I'm not going back. Go ahead.
So the first day after the Jussie Smollett thing, literally the first day after it broke, we come back around the trading floor, and one of the guys who worked for me was this huge lefty liberal. He's like, "See, this kind of thing happens." I said, Brian, if you told me that the story he's saying was that that a UFO came down, sucked him up with MAGA hat, I'd believe that more than this story. Okay, this story is 100% bullshit. And he goes, "Oh, you're victim blaming now?" And I'm like, No, there's the victim here is me.
I knew it. I mean, as I said, I live here. Nothing ever happens. Nobody's out at 2:00 in the morning, especially when it's freezing. If a dog barks the wrong way, 20 people are on the phone to the police. It's like a Karen. It's a Karen neighborhood. It's not MAGA country.
And all the politicians were like,
That's
"Oh, this
amazing.
sounds so serious, Jussie. Can you tell us about it?" Shut up, man. You're a lying sack of shit.
The best part about the whole thing is it was like a Hollywood's person's like idea of what a hate crime would be. It's like he's got the noose around the neck that he's like still wearing, and he's saying that he's eating Subway and the whole thing was just so ridiculous. But anyway, what's Jim Bianco's idea?
Oh, so Jim Bianco's idea. That's why I love having you on, by the way. We shoot off in different corollaries. Anyway, so Jim Bianco came on and said the reason, like Chicago, obviously no one would lend Chicago money in a vacuum because Chicago is ridiculous. Right. There's a provision in the Illinois state constitution that says the state has to be on the hook for any municipality that runs into financial trouble. Other states don't have that provision. It needs to be changed in the constitution because as soon as it is, the state of Chicago then it has the bargaining power to go to the union and say, we're going to file for Chapter 9. I say that like I know what that is. Jim Bianco told me what Chapter 9 is. Different than Chapter 11. It's for state municipalities. We can file for Chapter 9. So either you negotiate with us or you're going to be out of luck. But until we change that constitution, we cannot do that. Now, so far, it's only been like Markham and Harvey. A couple other towns have gone out of business, right? Like Dalton, whatever. And the state is fine with covering those. But Chicago would be in bankruptcy, obviously, and no one would lend them money if it wasn't for the implicit state, not the explicit state backing, and then the implicit federal backing of the state. So
don't you think you could force their hands? I mean, nobody in Illinois, it would be very unpopular for Illinois to have to pick up a Chicago bankruptcy. So I kind of feel like that might force a negotiation hand as well.
But it hasn't so far, though. I hope it does. What we need,
because we haven't like washed our hands and said, okay, you're it's on you. Yeah.
So if Ted could win for governor. Can you tell me who you're voting for governor? Who you're
Ted's the choice. Yeah.
Ted's the choice. Ted's the obvious choice. So Bobby, should we have him on our other show, by the way? I talked to him quite a bit.
Yeah, I think we should.
He's kind of mad at
me. The potential Florida governor, James Fitchback. Yeah. So we should have Ted on as well.
Okay, so can we get back to?
But I'm sorry, I'm not doing equal time with Pritzker. Not going to happen.
There's no question.
I don't think he'll fit on the fucking screen.
You just see a picture of his. I know. I try not to talk about his looks. I try to think I'm above that, but I'm not above that. You two know that. But anyway, so let's go back to markets real quick. You said metals, and Bobby and I 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago were accused of being gold bugs, and at the time we're like, we're not gold bugs, just our data led this to this trade. Within the last year and a half, we're like, fuck yeah, we're gold bugs. What's wrong with you people? Why aren't you gold bugs too? And we're leaning into it a little more heavily. Over the last 3 weeks, I've actually, Bobby, you don't know this either, I don't think. I've sold 25% of my silver and 25% of my gold and 15% of my platinum. Not by virtue of the fact that I think the trade's over, just that I think it's prudent to take some profit when your position sizing is like, holy crap, I got a lot of silver. Have you sold any yet? Or are you still accumulating?
So I work with my husband on these things, and
I've met him. He's a hell of a nice guy, by the way.
So on the gold, absolutely not, because the gold thesis for us is different than the silver thesis. The gold is a changing of the financial order, central banks putting gold in their reserves instead of treasuries, China de facto settling their trade in gold. Like, we think it's becoming sort of a staple, and we think it's way underpriced. I mean, we throw out numbers amongst ourselves, double plus of, what it is today. And we think that it's been artificially held back by the paper market, which is part of what we think right now is price discovery. So gold we're not touching. Yes, in the broader how we have gold, because we have physical gold, we have ETF, we have miners. So there may be some changes mostly on the miner side versus on ETFs and actual physical gold holdings. Silver's a little bit different because it's a different thesis. It's more volatile. I certainly think that we're in a place where we could see, and we probably will see, more upside, but I do believe that we've lightened up on some miners there. And I keep telling my husband to put in some stop losses. So I don't know that we're going to sell outright, but basically try to put a floor that if it comes back a certain amount, then we will be out of that because of the volatility. But every time we talk about doing that, it makes another leg up. So, that hasn't happened quite yet. But we're talking like, as I said, like from a portfolio dynamic, like the ideal portfolio in our minds is that 60-20-20. And bonds, like, like kind of like the long-term fixed income, like,
Yeah. So I technically have the same amount as before because I rebalance every, in the middle of the year. Because it's just something I've done for a long time, trying to avoid the typical rebalance cycles, right? So I rebalance every 12 months, but mid-year to mid-year to mid-year to mid-year, right? And gold was in a sideways consolidation last mid-year. So I didn't consolidate. And now I'm watching, 6 straight months in a row of increases in gold. Now, silver used to be they called it the poor man's gold, right? And one of the things that seems to me to be happening now is the say that word for me, would you?
Electrification.
Electrification.
Yeah. My shirt is way too tight to say that word. Electrification of the world is now data centers and quantum computing as opposed to green vehicles and that stuff.
Right.
And it seems to me silver is basically got a hold of industrial and precious metals demand, and it's taken steroids to boost both.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when silver goes down. It's not just a poor man's gold anymore. It still acts like a safety trade. It still acts like a strong economy trade.
And an
it
AI
still
trade.
does a Fed cutting trade. It's like there's almost, now that it'll drop 20% after I say this, there's almost not a scenario where silver falls in the near future.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that it's when there's when you start seeing more resources putting towards the activities, because we know it's not direct mining, right? It's like it's something that comes as an ancillary output of other activity. So I think that that when you see the supply demand side shift a little bit, that's going to have a legacy of impact. But I'm curious, because Jim, you're so focused on capital gains. Have you gotten on my bandwagon at all that we need to make metals have the same capital gains rate? Well, first of all, have no capital gains rate because it's money. But if it's going to have one, to at least have the same one as stocks on a long-term basis, because right now it's taxed as a collectible. And so we're all getting killed, even if you have, the gold ETF or whatnot, with an extra capital gains by owning metals, because historically they've been classified by the IRS as collectibles instead of the money that it is.
I had this is news to me. I had no idea.
My article about this. Yeah.
Can you send it to me? This is amazing.
Yeah.
And again, the physical gold, every ounce of physical gold that I bought years ago, I bought from someone at $10,000 an ounce. So I'll declare a loss on it. Just a joke. I'm not doing that. IRS, I will report it perfectly if I ever sell any physical, which I will not ever sell.
Wait, I thought you got robbed and you don't have any.
Of course I got robbed.
Right, yeah.
Of course I did. Yes.
There's a Second Amendment guy I really like. His name's Colio Noir, and he sells shirts that say, "I lost all my guns in a boating accident." I just love that shirt.
That's great.
If they ever try to take his guns, I just lost them all.
Right. Yeah.
And Wish shirt said nobody has any physical gold. Wish just said that.
Nobody has any.
I don't have any.
No, none of us do. It's all it's a theoretical discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a theoretical discussion. But yeah, we're all getting hosed when you own gold or something that's linked to gold, because they are saying that is a collectible. And to me, that is an absolute scam. And I have not found anybody willing to pick up this torch and, shake the trees, probably because the government doesn't want us owning gold, right? They want us buying treasuries.
But even like PSLV, like the ETF, is silver too. And do you know the rate off the top of your head?
It's in the 30s. Yeah, it's like I can pull up my article, but it's one of those facts that's not like the numbers not fully switching in the head, but I need to go like re-pull it up again. But yeah,
I don't
it's
even know what to
disgusting.
say to that.
In
Yeah.
fact, I'll look it up right now.
Okay, that just blows me away. Wow. I again, counting your chickens before they hatch, I thought, okay, I'm up now. If I have to pay 30% of that shit, because I got a pretty low cost.
Oh, you know what I think it is? Actually, sorry, I think it might be taxed at ordinary income. Hold on. We really get screwed. Hold on. Great of cap gains on.
If you put a link to your article up, Carol, somewhere, I'll put it on the screen. So
yeah,
people
we'll
can check it out.
throw that everywhere, because that's a big one. And am I on your bandwagon? Hell yeah, I'm on your bandwagon now.
Yeah, no, it's collectibles. Yeah, facing higher maximum long-term rates of 28%, and then short-term gains ordinary. So I think it's 28%.
So which is basically like ordinary
plus whatever else that you have to pay for ACA on top of there, whatever it is. But yeah, it's like like eight percentage points, but on a percentage basis, it's like it's absolutely. Sorry to say this, but it's rape.
Yeah, exactly. There's no question, Bobby.
So, okay, I'm working on a theory. I'm moderating a panel at a Bitcoin event Saturday. And I'm featured as the critic, right? As the skeptic, so to speak, on the Bitcoin panel. And one of the things that Bitcoin people always talk about is how it protects your money, right? Bitcoin protects your money. It's got limited supply. So do not stocks and gold basically do the exact same thing? And part of the thing I'm working on is the stock side of things, because people say, well, stocks don't have a limited supply. Well, as a matter of fact, for years, the supply of individual stocks have been shrinking because of buybacks.
But for any individual company, right? If you have a company and you want to raise additional capital, you can issue new shares, which will dilute the holdings. Their points, which I'm not saying I'm agreeing with, I'm just giving you the arguments for your thesis, because I was on speech team and a debater and all of that, is that their argument is, well, there's only going to be ever this much that has been created and no new supply can ever be created. So when you look at stock to flow, that number is fixed at some point in time. And by the way, lots of people lose their keys. So it's not even the headline number. It's an amount that's smaller than that. But to me, that isn't a great argument. There's a lot of things that are limited in supply that doesn't make something
valuable,
inherently valuable.
Well, so to that point, Jimmy always talks about the Honus Wagner baseball card, which is, there's only two of them. It's worth millions of dollars, but not to me. Right. So anyway, what I was going to say about the stock thing is the S&P 500 always only has 500 stocks in it. Granted, individual companies can increase their shares of stocks. But when I look back at inflationary regimes where we're printing money, stocks went up too. Regardless
the dollar
of
went down.
But it's a nominal versus real argument. And that's going to be what they're going to come back to you. Here's my question I've always had. Can you guys think of an asset class historically that has required so much promotion in order, you know what I'm saying? Like, if something's inherently valuable, why is there so much promotion that's needed? Because like most of the time, like if I find something that's great, like I don't want to tell anybody. I want to keep that to myself, hoard it. Like, maybe at the very end, I'll be like, oh, hey, Jim, you might like this. But like, usually that's not something, like if I want to go buy a house that's undervalued, like I'm not like, hey guys, I'll look at this great house. I'm like, I'm going to go snap that up and good luck to the rest of you. It just seems to me, I cannot think of arguments of other like intrinsically valuable things that require this promotion machine.
You mean extrinsically valuable, you meant, right? Like
it
has no
intrinsically
that something that had value because
it's value, and that you need somebody to tell you.
So it doesn't. You're saying if it had all this intrinsic value, you wouldn't need.
I just can't think of another example. I'm not saying it's not the case.
Right, it's very similar.
I have no other example in a history of that.
Yeah, my brother made thousands and thousands of dollars trading and buying and selling Beanie Babies. Like it's really a similar thing, and that required a lot of promotion and a lot of buzz to go around too for that trade. But it was the weirdest shit in the world, in my opinion, that whole Beanie Baby thing. So whatever.
But we know today, after the the promotional mania, that those are not there. You know, the intrinsic value of those are like probably $2.99, like whatever the price tag said they were, but they're not worth thousands of dollars anymore. That, you know, that was the promotional aspect. That wasn't the intrinsic. And so I'm just trying. Yeah.
Can I just real quick? I did not mean to interrupt you, Carol. Is it okay if I shoot off to basketball practice and you?
Yeah. Because I want to keep going on this.
Again, basketball season lasts for only 3 more weeks, and then I'm back 100% with you. But now these girls need me.
Now more than ever.
Now more than ever.
Yeah. Now Doogie came in the comments and said there are special minted coins that don't require promotion, but those, no, I don't know which ones those are. Like, I don't look at those. The US dollar does not require promotion. Everybody wants it across the world.
Gold. I mean, like either you get it or you don't. Real, like people just naturally, these are things that people look to accumulate. Stocks, like the value is the demand that has been created, in my opinion. And again, this is just an observation, is heavily from the promotion of it versus anything else, in my opinion. But I'm old, so what do I know?
Well, so am I. And so, like, you know, to Dougie's point, the Susan B. Anthony dollar failed. So it needed promotion and nobody wanted it. So it's gone, right? And, you know, in terms of the stock analogy, I understand what you're saying about nominal versus real. And Bitcoin is going up in real value compared to dollars.
Right.
Right. So it's sort of still a nominal conversation until they get, and I said this the last time I was at a Bitcoin conference, which was only a month ago. I said, until you guys get a marketplace that doesn't accept anything but Bitcoin and prices everything in Bitcoin, regardless of where the dollar is, it's a nominal conversation.
Well, and there's just so much volatility. It's very difficult to argue the store of value scenario with the volatility. And you can say, oh, well, gold's increased. It has a 5,000-year history, and it's not moving on a day-to-day basis. Like, you know, we may be seeing trajectory moves, but we're not seeing it, you know, go like this for, you know, no reason, having these huge swings. So I think it's, and again, it could be a huge thing. People could transact in it. Things could get priced in it. Who knows what's coming down? But what I see, Bobby, in the world is that central banks, who have been net sellers of treasuries for over the last 10 years, when they're looking to put things into their reserve holdings, they're not putting other currencies. They're not putting Bitcoin. They're putting gold, because that has been the solid anchor. And it's the same thesis as Bitcoin at the foundational level. Obviously, it acts somewhat differently, but it's the same thesis. So I think what you could hope is that people who are interested in Bitcoin now learn to diversify into metals and don't put all of their eggs into one basket, because the thesis is right. They are right. Anybody who's holding it, not just because of some hype, but who's holding it because of the money thesis. The thesis is 100% correct, but you're betting on one horse to get you there.
Yeah. And it's funny, I was proud when you said that, because the conference I was at, I was moderating a panel, and the first thing I said was, how many of you own Bitcoin? Everybody in the room raised their hand. How many of you own only Bitcoin? 95% of them kept their hands up. Then I said, how many of you think Bitcoin cannot go to zero? Like, it's impossible. And 80% of them kept their hands up. And I don't know about you.
That's probably right. It probably can't go to zero, but it could go to like $2, right? Like, there's going to be somebody who's benefiting, who owns the whole supply. It probably doesn't go to zero, but could it go to 2 or 5 or 10? Like some crazy fall off. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'll give you two. I'm asking this of people above my intelligence level. You, Brian Westbury, Mike Green. I'll give you two separate theses. Mike Green said, Bitcoin, if it were to become currency, the global currency of the world, the reserve currency, you would have basically serfs and lords again, because people who own huge swaths of it now would own 8, 9, 10% of the global wealth.
Sure.
Right. That's one thesis. Brian Westbury said he believed in Bitcoin until they all started talking about appreciation and protecting your wealth, rather than an asset where emerging markets, people are actually in danger of losing their wealth tomorrow, like El Salvador or Venezuelans, when they got away from that being the core use case for it. So where do you fall on either one of those?
I think they're both right. I think there are a lot of issues. I think those are two of the issues. I think the technology issue of what happens when you have supercomputing, quantum computing that can crack the cryptography, and there isn't sort of the improvement in whatever technology that they're using to be able to safeguard that. I just in order for Bitcoin to be the global currency, if you think about what money is, if you think about the US dollar, right? We all know the standard economist definition, right? It's a unit of account, it's a store of value, it's a medium of exchange. And they can try to make the store of value argument, though I don't believe, again, with the volatility, that you can consider that a store of value. We know it's not a unit of account. Absolutely nothing is priced in Bitcoin. And it's hard to fathom a time when, you're going to the grocery store and like that's the measure, right? Like we measure time in hours and minutes, and then all of a sudden we're going to start measuring things in Bitcoin. And the medium of exchange, again, until the volatility goes away, why would anybody accept that as a medium of exchange? Because you don't know then what it is you're going to be able to re-exchange it for the next day. And I also, the biggest thing for me is, when you ask people what stands behind the US dollar, at the end of the day, it's the giant Army and Marines and Air Force and other defense forces that we have, Space Force now. Nobody's standing behind Bitcoin and, ready to like take up arms to make sure that things happen in Bitcoin. That's the problem with decentralization. And so as things shift in the global order, the idea that like, it's like socialism, that everyone's going to come together and be able to do that on their own without some level of structure is just, again, outside the use cases of anything that's ever happened in human nature before. And that kind of ties back to Mike Green, is that like, you've got all these people who are benefiting from it, but are those people willing to take up arms and stand up an army to defend that? I doubt it.
And that's one of my last comment on that is that's one of my things is that, the government made holding gold illegal. I think the only reason that they haven't already made Bitcoin restricted, if not illegal, because they haven't figured out how to take it all yet.
Well, not only that, they also want the votes of young people, and that would be politically not palatable. But there are things that they can do behind the scenes to undermine it, to make sure that it never gains, it gets to that next level. And it does seem to me, and this is very anecdotal, but it seems to me like if in terms of its trajectory, in terms of adoption and things like that, it does seem like we're on the slowing down side of the curve. It doesn't seem like there's this acceleration where more people are getting in and new people, and it's becoming more common. Like I kind of feel like some of the people who've done well have cashed out portions and they bought a nice car and they bought some gold. You know what I mean? So it just feels, and I go back to Jeff Bezos because you're like, well, data. But Jeff Bezos always said like, well, when the data and the anecdotal don't line up, I always go with the anecdotal. And I just kind of feel like anecdotally, it seems like it's not the acceleration isn't there. Not to say it can't re-accelerate, say that there won't be some catalyst. And I'm completely, because we did own it for a period of time. We owned a little bit, we bought it, we sold it, so like I'm fine to play in it, for a trade or an asset. And I just, your thesis is right. I'm just not sure it's the form factor that gets it done. And I understand why the people who own it want you to buy into the thesis. They haven't convinced me yet. So
it's fun. It'll be my second time in the Lion's Den. I kind of enjoy it. One of the things I told them at the time was one of my reasons for not wanting to adopt it fully is because you guys are all such assholes about it. And I was standing on stage saying that, and they looked at me and I go, how many of you can honestly say you haven't told someone to shut up, boomer, when they were asking questions about freaking Bitcoin? I'm not even technically a boomer. But
Well,
and they
it
all just kind of
ties
looked at the
back,
ground.
Bobby. It ties
What?
back to the point you made before, is it's a group of people who have never seen a real bear market in their lifetimes. And we all know that, like, in theory, things don't always go in one direction. And, what is going to be that core if and when things go sideways? Like, are they going to go, okay, fine, now I'm finally turning to my Bitcoin for the use case? Or they're going to go, oh, fuck, this thing's worth $90,000 today, and now it's the 40th thing. Like, you know what I mean? So I just don't know.
Yeah.
Hi, Tracy.
There's Tracy. I love Tracy.
We all love Tracy. Even
Yeah,
my husband, who Tracy doesn't know, is always like, oh, I follow your friend Tracy, and she said this about oil today.
Yeah. Last time I saw Tracy, we drank a little too much. So we had a lot of fun.
As you should.
Anyway, Carol, what are you working on now? How do people find you? How can people reach out to you? Any of that you got available? And then Luis, please put up the banner as I say goodbye again.
So the most important thing I'm working on is another Bears victory this weekend against the Rams in Chicago. Ben Johnson is practicing in the cold, that he's not letting heaters in practice to get everybody ready and hoping that the cold's going to be that advantage. So that's my number one project. I have a free economic newsletter if you like the things that I talk about at carolroth.com/news. And as you and Jim both well know, I'm very active on I still call it the Twitter. They call it the X,
Twitter
but
machine.
I call it the Twitter, just like still call it the Sears Tower at Carol J.S. Roth. Look at that graphic is up there. So those are ways you can find me. And I do a million different things. So we'll see.
Carol, thank you so much. It's been way too long, honestly,
so fun.
Since we've had you on. It's way too long. I'd like to do this more often. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks to Tradier for hosting this again. All you have to do is sign up and you get 3 months free. Click the link. Well, there's no link. Scan the code. It's not Bitcoin. I don't know. I'm old too. So just try that out for us. You'll be helping out the show. We get to bring you more people like Carol Roth. Carol, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, guys.
You know how the financial world goes. Here comes the buzzkill. Please make sure to take some time to read this boring disclaimer. We will owe you one.